Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Gino, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products. Today we're joined by Rory Warnock. Oh, that's a great start. Let me start again. Fuck me, Rory Warnock.
Rory Warnock.
Oh man. Let me regain myself. Let me take a sip of water.
Take a breath, mate. Deep breath into the nose.
Today we're joined with Rory Warnock, Breathwork facilitator and overall legend and champion. Brother, how you doing?
I'm very well, Dills. I'm very well. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm good. I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Thanks for joining us today, mate. And we were just talking beforehand. You are training at the moment for a 100-mile race in December, Mount Kosciuszko. Is that right?
That's correct. So I've got 100 miles in December. So I'm doing a lot of training at the moment around Bondi and trying to get the hills in, trying to just build that base level of fitness, call it. And but before that, I've got a 250k in the Atacama Desert, which is called the Atacama Crossing, the race in Chile in September. So I got two pretty big races that I need to stay focused and I need to train pretty hard for.
That is like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? What's wrong with you, man? Talk to me. Like, why would you do that? What's going on?
To answer the question, what's wrong with you? How long have we got in the podcast? Oh, mate, I did UTA, Ultra Trail Australia, which was 100 kilometers last May. And as a lot of endurance athletes do, they get the bug. And I really enjoyed the whole process. I loved the training. I loved the mental aspect that came with it. And I loved crossing that finish line. There was to date, it was probably one of the most euphoric days, feelings, sensations that I've ever had. I also get runner's high quite a lot, which feels incredible. I can be running around Centennial Park, which is beautiful, but I'll be listening to a track and I'll just get goosebumps all over my body and I'll start crying. So,
really?
Am I chasing sensation feeling or am I running away from something? Who knows?
Yeah. What's the mental? So what's the longest race that you have done so far to date?
Longest to date is 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers in one go, but then the 250 kilometers will be over 5 days and in a desert, which, brings its own challenges being sand and sand dunes. Yeah. And then the 100 miler is in one go as well. So, the gun goes at about 6 a.m. and you have 36 hours to get to the finish line.
And is that point A to point B, all of those races? So you start somewhere and you end somewhere else, or are you doing laps of something?
Correct, the former. Point A to point B. Yep. Get there as quick as you can and go hard, go well.
Jeez, mate. So what's the mentality in a 5-day race? Is that you're running for 12, sleeping for 6? Like, what's the process?
So each stage is split up. So people would often think that it'd be split up into 50-kilometer stages, which would make sense, but it's actually not. It's kind of split into about 30, then a 40, then a 30, then an 80, then something else. I can't quite remember the stages. I should probably look at them at some point, but I can't remember exactly the distances. So yeah, it's the split up. And, you know, if I'm honest, you know, like a 30K doesn't really scare me too much, but running an 80K is quite daunting for all the obvious reasons.
And after having run, you know, three days prior as well. So do you get much? So is it a gun goes off, you hit the 30Ks, and then you rest, you ice, you refuel, you sleep, you wake up, gun goes off, and you go again, and it's like a staggered start with depending where you finished?
Correct. To my knowledge, that's bang on. So you get to camp A, call it, and then you rest up, you get your fuel in, you sleep, and then I think the next day will be a staggered start depending on what time you finish or cross the finish line for that previous stage, if that makes sense. So I think what you just said there is bang on, is absolutely correct. But you know, if I'm honest, mate, I'm going in a bit blind here. I've never done a multi-stage race. You know, I've only done single day races, so it's a new challenge in itself, which I'm very excited for, but equally very scared for.
Yeah, mate, that's incredible, brother. So what pushed you to start getting into these like ultra marathons, these super long distances? What got you interested, or what got you involved?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bit of a story here. So about 2 years ago in November, I wanted to raise money. So I ran 482 kilometers in the month to raise money for men's mental health. So that ended up being about 16 or 17 kilometers every day. I can't quite remember exactly what it was. A running coach, who's still my running coach now, Greg Pearson, my running coach and a very good friend, he, I think, saw what I was doing, messaged me. He liked what I was doing around breathwork and breathing too, to improve mental and physical state. So he messaged me, we caught up over a coffee, and he said that he was running this 100-kilometer race. And, you know, I'd never ran over 21 kilometers. I'd never ran over a half marathon before. And I said, oh, you know, I'd love to be able to do that. And he goes, well, why don't you just do it? And I said, what, do you really think I could do it? He goes, yeah, I'll help coach you, and we'll get you across that finish line. You know, and then 3 months later, here's me in the Blue Mountains about to run 100 kilometers, and I end up finishing in about 13 and a half hours, and is one of the best experiences of my life. So, you know, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't never have done it. And I realized that I was quite good at it. And often as humans, I'm sure you're very much aware, we gravitate towards the things that we're good at. And I loved them. I loved the sensation of running and how it made me feel. You know, running for me is not really about the fitness. It's a lot more about the mental state that it can create. It's almost like a byproduct to get me to a certain place.
And so do you go to dark places? Like, was there a moment in that 100-kilometer race where you're like, I'm in a dark place right now, I don't know if I can finish?
If I'm honest, not really for that one. I was waiting for it. I was waiting. And, you know, I trained very hard and I was very disciplined for about 3 months. I didn't go out. I was waking up at, you know, about 4 or 5 in the morning on a Saturday, driving out to the Blue Mountains on my own to do a trail marathon, you know, stopping off at McDonald's on the way home, eating 3 burgers, and then coming home, sleeping. And then I'd wake up on the Sunday, do a trail half marathon, you know, so I wasn't socializing. It was just very, very focused. So, you know, it was I guess a bit of a confirmation bias here. The harder that you work for something, the better the results will be. And, you know, I got the runner's high quite a lot when I was doing that. I didn't have any dark moments, but I just felt so focused. Right? Focus is the best word I can describe there, where nothing was going to get in my way. And I just felt like I had the blinkers on and I was just going, just marching on.
And what was that drive? Was this like, did you have a mantra going on in your head, or did you have a reason for doing it? You know, you've done the momentum course with us. We talk about purpose and why. Did you have sort of a purpose and why? Was you like, I'm proving people wrong, or I'm proving this just to myself, I can do this? Or was there anything there driving you?
I think I'm very intrinsically motivated. And I think a lot of what I do is for myself. I'm not trying to prove a point for anyone or be a certain person. I love living, I love life, and I want to experience as much as I can. And I know running 100 kilometers will get you to a certain place in your head where you would never be able to get to unless you ran 100 kilometers. So I wanted to experience that feeling and that sensation, which was pretty profound. So I think to answer your questions, you know, so it's for me, and it was a bit of a bucket list, tick the box, and now it seems like I've got the bug. I want to do a lot more.
That's incredible, man. I can't wait. We'll have to get you back on and talk about it once you've done the 255 day. That and then the 100 mile in a day. So how long will that take you if you did 100 Ks in, what did you say, 36 hours? You did 100 kilometers?
I did 100 kilometers in 13 and a half hours.
Oh, 13 and a
under
half.
14, under 14 hours. So hopefully I'll do, 160 kilometers in maybe under 20 hours.
Wow, mate.
I'd be happy with under 20 hours, because the UTA 100, the one that I've done, was 5K of elevation as well. There's a lot of hiking, so which is hard in the old legs for all the obvious reasons. But I think the next one, this 100 miler in Kosciuszko, is a little bit flatter. Yeah. So we shall see. But you never know how you're going to react. And for anyone who's listening too, if you're thinking that 100K sounds very far, which I'm not saying it's not far, but the furthest I'd ran in training was 42 kilometers. So the furthest I'd ran was about a trail marathon, roughly 42 or 45. And then I ran an additional 55 on top of that. That as long as you have a strong physical body, and you've got your mental state is there as well, you'll be able to keep going. If you don't have a strong physical body, your muscles, your joints, your ligaments, your body will break down. But as long as you can push that on with having a bit of craziness in your head as well.
Absolutely. And so you're training for this 5-day. Will that include what's your longest run you'll do for that? So you did 42K was your longest for the 100K. Have you now upped that, and have you run a 50 or 60 kilometer just training session?
Well, I actually don't think they'll be as far. I need to check in with my program and what Greg has been programming for me. But I think a lot of what it'll be will be, a run in the morning, then a run in the afternoon as well, just to get your body conditioned to repetitive load, call it. And there'll be a lot more of running on a Friday, then also running on Saturday, then also running on a Sunday. So just to get used to and condition the body, like I mentioned, your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, the bones, the muscles, just to understand what that feeling is like and to try and recover faster, essentially. So I don't think I'll be running too far in one go, but I think it'll just be more kilometers in a shorter period over a number of days, if that makes sense.
And you mentioned when your coach first reached out to you, you said he saw what you were doing, and he saw your breath work stuff, obviously. So how's your breathing in these races? Are you nostril breathing the whole time through these long distance races, or does it get to a point where you are gassed and you do start to mouth breathe?
Yeah, good question. Predominantly nasal breathing. Especially in the longer runs, and especially even in my steady state training runs that I'll do around here in Sydney, all my running is kind of nasal breathing, unless it's a very high intensity. And for obvious reasons, when you're running a long distance, it's not going to be high intensity just because you've got a long way to go. So it's always nasal breathing for a number of reasons. When you nasal breathe, it lowers the heart rate, and obviously that's less stress on the body, less stress in the nervous system. If you create too much stress through the mouth, it's going to drive your heart rate up, and you won't be able to sustain performance for a longer duration. The nose also slows the breath down, and we know that less breath is better for oxygen uptake and delivery. And obviously we need oxygen in the body to be turned into ATP, turned into energy, so we can actually perform and then recover nice and quick as well. The nose also helps to warm and filter the air and just bringing some clean oxygen into the body rather than that unconditioned air, which we often get in Sydney. And if you're out in the mountains and maybe there's back burning going on or whatever it may be, you don't want to be sucking in that unconditioned air through the mouth straight into the lungs, just because it's not good for you for a lot of reasons. So yeah, I usually using the nose, mate.
So what you've touched on a couple of the benefits there already of nasal breathing. Why is it? Because when I go for a run or even a hike, and I'm walking, even if I'm just sitting here doing work and I start to nose breathe and I'm like, okay, let's bring some awareness to my breath, I'll notice it's harder. And is that because, well, Dylan, you're just not doing it, and the more you do it, the easier it does become, and it's like a muscle. It's like anything, it takes training? Or is it deliberately harder because what you just mentioned there is it's meant to be a slower breath in and a slower breath out?
Yeah, a little bit. What you said there definitely makes a bit of sense. So our primary stimulus to breathe is rising carbon dioxide, not a lack of oxygen. So for example, if you're hiking, for example, you give the hiking example. When you're hiking, your heart rate starts to rise as due to metabolic demand. And when your heart rate rises due to metabolism, CO2 builds in the body. The only way to get rid of CO2 is out the nose or out the mouth. And as the heart rate rises, more CO2, you need to get rid of it. So for you, if you're sitting at your desk and you start to think that nasal breathing is quite challenging, one of the best ways to improve that is just to improve your CO2 tolerance. And there's 3 great ways to improve CO2 tolerance, which is what I do with a lot of the athletes that I work with, and a lot of individuals as well. Just as general humans, we need to improve our CO2 tolerance to handle stress as well. So 3 great ways to improve CO2 tolerance is breath holding, like the free divers, slow breathing, just a slow breathing practice, and then nasal breathing. Our nose is naturally, our wee nostrils are naturally smaller than a big mouth. And due to, the stresses of life or the modern world that we live in, a lot of us have adopted this habitual over breathing pattern out the mouth, and you'll see this if you're hiking or you're running. People are breathing like that, but it's so inefficient for oxygen into the working cells and tissues. Over breathing gets rid of too much CO2. I remember at school, I was taught that CO2 is just purely a byproduct due to metabolism. Yes, it is, but we also need it in the body for vasodilation to open up the blood vessels. If you get rid of too much CO2, mouth breathing, over breathing, vasoconstriction happens. So the blood vessels narrow and become smaller. So it's too difficult, or it makes it difficult to transport that oxygenated blood around the body. We also need CO2 in the body so that oxygen can get into the working cells and tissues efficiently and effectively. I won't go into too much detail here, but when we breathe, oxygen goes into the nose, into the lungs, gets transported into the blood system, and then around the body into the working cells and tissues. But CO2 has to be present for oxygen to get out of the blood cell, in the nice simple terms, to move from the blood cell into the working cells and tissues. If CO2 isn't present because we've been over breathing, that affinity between the oxygen and the hemoglobin in the red blood cell becomes stronger, and we actually can't get oxygen into the working cells and tissues. So CO2 is very important for a number of reasons, and we have to improve that CO2 tolerance. Like for you, for example, Dylan, I know I'm just going on a little rant here. For you, for example, when you're hiking, and if you're trying to nasal breathe and you find it hard, that air hunger sensation, it's simply CO2 building in the body. So fight against that urge, fight against that temptation to open the mouth. A little example that I give is, think of a champagne bottle. If you shake the champagne bottle and pop it open, all that fizz comes straight out. If you're hiking and you're nasal breathing, you've got all that CO2 in the body, so that's building that CO2 tolerance. That's great. That's what you want to do. It's a great part of improving the system, essentially. But as soon as you go and get rid of it, that's you pop in the champagne and that CO2 just burst. Okay, so really just nasal breathe as much as you can. And now that we've had this discussion, and for anyone listening, that air hunger sensation almost feels a bit like suffocation. That's just CO2 in the body. The more that you can withstand that, the better you can perform in the future as well. So I do a lot of CO2 tolerance work personally and with clients.
So I'll take it back a step, because I find this stuff fascinating, and we've done a couple of breathwork sessions. I remember about this time last year, right? I was in quarantine. I came back from overseas, and you did a breathwork session with me and my mum whilst we were trying not to kill each other in the hotel room. But go back to the basics. Like, what is breathwork? What is it?
Good question. It's a good place to start, isn't it? So
yeah.
I look at or I think of breathwork as an umbrella term. So you think of, we have running, you have yoga, you have strength training, but there's a lot of things that come off that. So, if you said to me, Rory, what kind of running do you do? I could do road running, I could do fartlek running, I could do trail running, I could do long distance, short distance, track, field, not field, but track. So there's a lot of different things that you could do. Same as yoga, you could do plenty of other ones under the yoga umbrella. So breath work, there's a lot of different breathing techniques that you can do to create a specific or desired outcome, and whatever that desired outcome to you may be. I also like to think of breath work just as a mental and physical health practice. So if you want to improve your mental and physical health, the breath is the foundation to human development. So it's a great place to start. So if you said to me, Rory, I would like to reduce stress, I find myself holding my breath a lot when I'm sitting behind the laptop and doing emails. So I'd say, well, those that start with a bit of breath awareness. So you can tune into the body, tune into breath, understanding when you start to hold your breath. Then I say, when you hold your breath, let's work on a bit of functional breathing to try and implement more optimal breathing. Because when you hold your breath, it's apnea. It's definitely not optimal for us as humans, because you're just starving the brain of oxygen. So you want to try and improve the way that you breathe through that. So that's just one example. And then if you said, like, I get anxious before a talk or a presentation, I'd say, well, let's look at a physiological sigh. It's a great resetter. It blows off CO2 from the body. CO2 is also a metabolic stress messenger. So the more stress that you feel, CO2 is building in the body. So a little physiological sigh is a great way just to reset the mind, reset the body, and to use your physiology to reduce stress, as opposed to using the mind to control the mind when you feel stress, if that makes sense. Breathwork is also is active. I'd say 100% of the time breathwork is active. Meditation is often passive. Nothing against meditation. I think it's a fantastic practice. But for someone like myself who struggled a lot with anxiety, often telling someone with anxiety to meditate is quite a challenging thing, just talking from experience here. And often you want to get out of your head and into your body, and breathwork is a great way to do that. And then that kind of moves on to other techniques I call conscious connected breathing, very similar to Tumo, holotropic, rebirth, Wim Hof, Kriya. They're very similar in that they're very similar, but people like to put their own words on it.
Yeah. So it starts with the awareness, bringing the awareness to your breath, and then linking it to some desire or some outcome of, like, okay, do we want to de-stress? Because you mentioned a couple other forms of breath work. The one that comes probably that made breath work mainstream was the Wim Hof. Would you say is that how it kind of has really exploded in the last 5 years, maybe 10?
Yeah, I would agree. I think Wim has made breathwork very mainstream, and I take my hat off to him for doing that. You've got books like The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown. That's who I did my certification with. You have you have a book, Breath, by James Nestor, who, it's an incredible book that came out about 2 years ago. He has nothing to do with breathing, or he's not a breathwork facilitator or a breathwork coach. He is a journalist. So it's great to get someone who has no bias towards any view, but he looks at a wide range of breathing techniques and breathing methods, which is incredible. Because one thing that I wanted to do when I got into this space was, I never wanted to say, oh, I'm a Wim Hof instructor, or I'm an Oxygen Advantage instructor. I wanted to be able to offer a wide range from mental health to physical health to emotional state sort of work. And it's the kind of way that I'm running my business here, where I work in medical clinics, I work with corporates, I work with athletes. Because the breath, we use the breath every second of every day. So there's a way to tap into it to improve, well-being and performance, whatever that means to you in any line of work.
And the best place for the average person to start, what does that look like? What's step number 1 to 3 of breath work? Just for the as you said, I think we can all agree that we're too stressed at the moment. We're too sensitive to information. How do we just start this process of going down this breathwork journey?
Yeah, look, like a lot of things, you've got to be patient. And often with breathwork, it's not that sexy. It's not a sexy app. It's not the best new tech gimmick or whatever it is, but it works. It's scientifically proven. It's based on hard evidence and hard science. So the best place I would start is awareness. I think you'd maybe agree with this, where the more aware and mindful we are as humans, the better our ability is to change and grow and improve and develop. If you're not even aware of how you're breathing, you won't be able to change. And a lot of people aren't even aware that they're breathing using the upper chest, that they're breathing using the mouth, that they're breathing really shallow. They're not implementing the diaphragm. They're not breathing deep. They're not expanding into the lungs, into the ribs. So start with awareness, just really tune into how the person is breathing.
So what is a good breath then, to expand on your point just then? Like, what are we looking to bring into our breathing? So you mentioned a couple of things there, but can you expand a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So, after the breath awareness, I then move into functional breathing. So to answer that question, Dills, a good breath, an optimal breath, should be in through the nose. It should be light, quiet. It should be deep, and it should be slow. So we should always breathe into the nose to get all the benefits of nasal breathing. We shouldn't be able to hear our breathing. It shouldn't go, you shouldn't be able to hear it. It's just light into the nose, nice and delicate, not disturbing any of the wee hairs inside the nostril. It should go deep into the lungs. You should feel the belly will come out a little bit, not too severe. And then the ribs will move out laterally in about a 360. So they should come out like so. So as the diaphragm moves down, that big breathing muscle, the ribs will move out, you see me here, move out laterally like so. So, some people even think that, exactly does. Some people even think that when you breathe in, your belly goes in. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
As you breathe in, the lungs will inflate, diaphragm moves down, which will just push the belly gently out a wee bit. And then the ribs move out laterally as well. So that's a functional breath, an optimal breath. That's how we should be breathing day to day. But like we discussed, over breathing has become a bit of a negative that people are doing these days. Short, shallow upper chest, and it's just the functional breathing has so many benefits, and dysfunctional breathing has so many negatives. So if you swap out all the negatives and add all the positives, it's almost a double positive. If that makes sense.
And it's something that we do every second of every day. We're breathing. It's always happening, and we've so overcomplicated health. We're bombarded with information, and it's like, take this supplement, do this, 30 days to abs, or try this new diet. And what I love about breathwork is and what I love about, following you on Instagram and all the things that you share and talk about, it's like bringing awareness to your breath will only increase your health performance, de-stress, and as you said, take away all the negative effects. And I'm sure I've seen you post about, some of the links from mouth breathing and short breaths and over breathing to serious health problems, right? there's starting to, now the research is starting to catch up to hey, if you change your breath to nasal, long, deep, as you said, diaphragm breathing, it's linked to, a lot healthier, or what's the right way to say it? It's the opposite is linked to disease, and disease in the body, break it down, dis-ease, again, back to what you're talking about with the breath work. It's like bringing the awareness so that you are in a calm, relaxed state. And what's been the biggest surprise for you that you're like, wow, breath actually impacts this? Or, I'm not sure how long has your journey been so far in this space?
Yeah, I got into this work because it changed my life. I went to a breathwork session maybe about 2016, 2017, when my anxiety and my depression was probably at an all-time low. I was on antidepressants, and I wanted to get off them. I wanted to find a more holistic way to improve my health. I had an experience, a 45-minute experience, and I never done something so profound in my life. And I thought, holy heck, if I can do this with my breath and make me feel as good as it made me feel there, I'm all in. So I just started going down all the rabbit holes and understanding how to breathe in certain rhythms, rates, depths to actually improve mental and physical health. And I got stuck into, I've got a science degree from university. I graduated with a strength and conditioning degree. So I've always come from a sporting performance background. And then when I started going into all this, into PubMed and Google Scholar, I thought, this is the real deal. And I started going down and realizing how important nasal breathing is, just like you mentioned. I immerse myself in this data and this literature every single day. And, if you change the way that you breathe from mouth to nose, it can change your life massively. And I'm 100% for that. I've even said to clients, patients, friends, when you sleep, tape your mouth.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
I beat you to it.
I know. That was going to be my next question.
Put a bit of tape over your mouth. It's, people look at me like I have 7 heads when I say that.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense. So, we have 24 hours in a day. If you're consciously breathing for 16 of those hours, then you're in bed for 8 hours or 9 hours, whatever it may be. That's 1/3 of your day. Think how many hours that is in your week, in your month, in your year, in your life. So if you can consciously dictate and choose how to breathe when you're awake, during wakefulness, in and out through the nose, But as soon as you fall asleep, if this happens and you start to mouth breathe, you'll upregulate the nervous system. You'll increase that stress through the heart, through the body, through the mind. Then you'll wake up, you'll feel groggy, less energy. You could feel anxious, you could feel depressed, all these negative effects that we don't want to feel as humans. So to make sure that doesn't happen, and to make sure you use the nose when you're asleep, just put a wee bit of 3M tape, something over the lips just to seal them, and to make sure you use the nose. It's massively underrated and is extremely effective, and it works.
How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I did it about 2 years ago, and I spoke to my partner, and she always said to me that I didn't open my mouth anyway. So I did it like anything, as a coach, I want to experience it all and do everything before I tell other people to do it. But I know when I sleep, I don't open my mouth. Maybe it's because I've trained myself so much to use my nose during wakefulness. Neuroplasticity, we can change you to its environment. So maybe because I've consciously used my nose so much during wakefulness, then when I sleep, I don't open my mouth. But I know that too. When I wake up in the morning at 5 a.m, which is quite early, I feel awake. I feel energized. I'm ready to go. My mouth isn't dry. I notice it. But if you do wake up in the morning, if anyone feels groggy, you feel tired, if your mouth is dry, if you feel a bit anxious, you feel tired, tape your mouth and see how you feel.
Okay. I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna go to the store this week, get some tape, and I'll let you know how I go. So you reckon there's a very noticeable difference, just implementing that noticeable difference between your state of awake in the morning?
Massively. I mean, you even said as well, this ease, that is kind of created through stress, right? We know how bad stress is to our body, our mind, our nervous system. So if you can reduce that stress by breathing in a more functional way, to move from that sympathetic, that fight or flight, into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest, your whole world changes. So it's absolutely underrated and overlooked, and it can be extremely effective to improving your mental health and physical health.
You mentioned that you work with athletes. What's it doing from a high performance standpoint? Because these guys are, nutritionists training every single day. What's the added benefit for them changing from mouth breathing to nasal breathing, or is that the work that you're predominantly doing with them? Is the same thing, transitioning and educating around nasal breathing?
One of the techniques that we'll do is the conscious connected breathing. They get a lot out of it, and so this is what I do with the Sydney Swans. If they have games within 6 days of each other, stress levels can be quite high. They need to down regulate. They need to feel relaxed, whether they made too many unforced errors on the field, whether they heard someone in the crowd saying something that wasn't very nice. They've got all this in their head, and they need to just relax, get out of the head and into the body, and just feel calm and clear and focused for the next task, the next game, looking ahead. So we'll do that conscious connected practice. Play music, they'll breathe deep, they feel relaxed, and the comments after is always pretty positive. So that's not really for the physical performance, but that's just more for the mental state, which it comes hand in hand, right?
100%.
The physical stuff that I'll do is a lot more about the nasal breathing, a lot more about the oxygen uptake and delivery, a lot more about CO2 tolerance. The better you can tolerate CO2, the more oxygen will be readily available. And for obvious reasons, you want to perform at high ability for a long duration, and you want to be able to recover fast as well. So it's being able to move from that parasympathetic to sympathetic, from sympathetic to parasympathetic, depending what you're doing. If the ball gets kicked downfield, you need to switch on fast and you need to get down there. But then once that play then moves and the ball's at the other side of the field, then what do you do from there? You then close your mouth, you then use your nose, you slow your heart rate down, because you don't want to be panting away, and you don't want to be panting and waiting for the ball. You want to be down regulating, slowing the heart rate down, and then ready for the next phase of play. And
I was listening to Israel Adesanya, I think it is, the UFC fighter. He talks a lot about breath work, and in a few of his press conferences, he said, all the future champions, it's going to be breath. The key is in breath, and you watch him fight, and you see him in between rounds. It's all all in and out of the. Sorry, man, I made a bit too much noise then with my nasal breathing, but all through the nose, the nasal breathing. And even when I got into, I did a bit of Muay Thai last year, and in Hawaii, I had to wear the masks while I was working out. And so what I would do is I'd drop it down a little bit, and it actually, because I had the mask, and I didn't want to have to be breathing in and out my sweat. I found that it was really easy for me to practice nasal breathing because I had the mask over my face. And so I actually got really good at nasal breathing in my Muay Thai, and it was at a high intensity. And I noticed a massive difference in between, like, just sparring with my coach from when I was wearing the mask to when I'd maybe dropped it even further and started breathing in and out through my mouth. It was a massive difference from my recovery point of view in between the rounds. But
that's so important, and you think about it for these athletes as well, Dills, where if they have 5 rounds, I'm actually not sure how many rounds they have in UFC. Is it 5 rounds?
I think so. I think like championship fights, maybe 5 rounds, and other fights, maybe 3. But I think it's 5.
And you think you want to be able to perform at your best in every round, and going into every round, you want to be clear, calm, focused with a low heart rate, so then you can perform at your best. If you then go into the corner, call it, boxing is more my thing rather than MMA or UFC.
Yeah.
But if you go into the corner, and if you sit down and you're still panting away, that's not going to lower the heart rate. That will keep the heart rate high. And like, if anyone's listening, and if you want to give it a go after this podcast, you could even look down at your Garmin or smartwatch, whatever people have, and just start panting really fast, really loud, and you'll see your heart rate fire up. So it's the most inefficient way of breathing for oxygen, for recovery, for parasympathetic. So, if you just change that from mouth to nose, as Israel does, and he works with a great coach, Dave Wood, in New Zealand, it can be so effective. And it's a lot of the stuff that I will help with the AFL boys too. And I'll mention to them, when you're going for a kick, you've just done a big run, you just ran pretty hard, pretty fast. Like, Dales, a lot more about this than I would.
Yep.
and then you have to stay focused. Then the crowd's on you, all eyes are on you. You've got to make this kick. In training, you make that kick 9 times out of 10. So why is that? Because you've got to try and control the nervous system, control your breathing, and the tactical and the technical work will come hand in hand with that. It's and if you're trying to make that kick and you're breathing fast out of the mouth, you don't give your body, your nervous system, mind time to really focus into the task at hand. So yeah, I refer back to the nose. Like anyone who's about to do something, if you're a golfer, you're playing darts. I'm not sure why darts came to my mind there. I've not played darts for years. If you're about to make a kick with whatever sport that is, a penalty kick for rugby, football, it transfers to everything.
To bring it back to the awareness side of things from this mental, from the mindset point of view, like whenever I found myself stressed out, it's like the first thing, come back to breath, right? Like, why is that? What is the come back to breath? Why does it regulate my entire system?
Well, the breath is connected to every internal system, right? And if you can voluntarily control your breathing, you have the ability to voluntarily control your state. So, for example, if you are feeling stressed, what will inevitably happen is the short, shallow upper chest, mouth breathing will come into play. And if you have that awareness, like you mentioned, Adils, you can then just slow it down. Use the nose, slow the heart rate down by consciously breathing into the nose. So like a 3 or 4 second inhale with a 5 or 6 second exhale. So by lengthening the exhale, you'll help move the body into that parasympathetic dominant state, that rest and digest. So, like I mentioned earlier, instead of using your mind to control your mind, if you're feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, by using your breath to directly tap into your physiology and your nervous system is one of the fastest and most direct ways to change how you think and feel in that moment.
Mate, I find it fascinating. And then the work that we did, so because you mentioned some different forms of breath work, and we did the stuff that we did, is that what you talk about, the collective what did you say?
Conscious connected.
Conscious connective. Is that the stuff that we did? Like, that's that form of breath work? Yeah.
Yeah, I find, that's where I fell in love with breath work, and that's what I find to be very, very effective. I was with Mervac yesterday, a property group. I was with Bupa this morning, and I love doing it with people who have never done it and who look at me like I have 7 heads again. I'm not sure why I have 7 heads. I've said that twice now, haven't I? They look at me when I'm saying, I'm introducing them to it, saying, you may feel feelings, sensations, vibrations to the body, the hands, the feet, but it's normal, it's natural. You're creating these changes internally with your breath. And people look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm just going to sit here and breathe, Rory. And then you do the session.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it an experience because I feel it's quite wanky. Like, do you want to come to my breathwork experience? You know what I mean? It's just breathwork. So they do it, then they look at me, they go, holy heck, what was that? And I love to see people's reactions when they understand how powerful the breath is. You don't have to go out and drink 100 beers to feel different, right? You can use your breath to change your state very quickly and very effectively.
Yeah, I my first ever men's like retreat that I went on, they had this breath work, and it would have been like 20, 30 guys in a room, dimmed lights, music playing, and it was like, all right, just breathe in and out through your nose as deeply and as fast as you can. And as I was doing it, as you said, it was like the tingles started. I was like, holy fuck, what the hell is this? More energy. And then just overwhelmed emotion. Like I just started crying, and other guys in the room, it was like this incredible experience where like we were releasing like genuine like trauma in our bodies through the breath. And it was one of the most healing like experiences I've done. And again, to your point, it was like all we did was breathe. And it's like, how the fuck? Like, that's incredible to me that can be an experience. As you said, don't need the 100 beers. You don't need the external substances. It's like, you can just go into your room, focus on your breath, and have these like euphoric healing experiences.
I completely agree. And, every individual is different and every day is different. So my emotional state today may be different than my emotional state tomorrow. So the experience that I have today may be different than the experience I have tomorrow. Today, I may do a conscious connected practice and I may laugh. Tomorrow, I may do a conscious connected practice and I may cry. It just depends how you are showing up on that day. And, we're two men here, 2 vulnerable men, and I love to be open and vulnerable and just open the gates for people to be open and vulnerable with me as well, because I think that's a huge part of life, and it can really transform an individual from a pretty dark place to a pretty strong place.
Well, mate, I fucking love the work you are doing, mate. Keep fucking changing the world. Where can people find you? Where can they get in touch with you? Should they want to inquire about your services or just get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best place to go would be my Instagram, which is Rory Warnock Wellness. You could check out my website, which is rorywarnock.com. I offer a wide range of sessions and workshops, specifically in the corporate world as well. So if you're looking for any offsites or team meetings, whatever that may be, it's a place I'm very passionate about, because I worked in corporate for a number of years and I've seen how miserable people are in that space. So if I can assist and help in any way, please do get in touch.
And people, get in touch. It's incredible. I've done a couple sessions with Rory, and you are a fucking magician, mate. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your knowledge and your wisdom, brother.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.